Howdy, y'all. Caleb here. Let's talk about the best Seraphon lists from LVO. This past weekend, the Las Vegas Open happened. It's the biggest Warhammer Age of Sigmar tournament in the world. I think they had over 300 players playing in it this year. Totally awesome. One of these days, I'll get out there to it. So we're going to look at who performed the best, some of the stats that Seraphon showed up with at LVO. So before we get to the list, which we're going to look at the top list, I did run down all the numbers. I looked at all the lists, did some spreadsheets, looked over all the numbers, and we had 23 different Seraphon players at LVO. So we have a pretty good sample base at a big tournament for how some competitive lists are doing since the battle scroll happened last month and how things are shaking out. We had 60 wins, 54 losses, and 1 tied with a win rate of 52%. That ends up with a little bit higher win rate than what we've seen in some of the stats recently. Now, this is just one tournament, but it's a big one, so it's a good sample size. So that's good. That means we're kind of trending in the right direction, I think. We didn't end up with any 5-0 lists. No Seraphon made it into the top bracket, but we did have a pretty good win percentage here. We had 6 lists that went 4-1, 6 that went 3-2, 7 that went 2-3, 4 that went 1-4, and luckily nobody went 0-5. So that's a good sign. Our faction win rates. Shadow Strike had the best faction win rate. Sub-faction is what I mean by this, with 56%. Sunclaw at 51%, Eternal Starhost at 40%, and Thunderquake at 50%. Eternal and Thunderquake didn't really have all that many people playing it, and so theirs aren't quite as accurate as Shadow Strike and Sunclaw. Interestingly, of the 6 Seraphon lists that went 4-1, 5 were Sunclaw, and only 1 was Shadow Strike. So I think we're seeing Sunclaw popping up towards the top of the heap as far as some of these lists go. Another interesting thing is I was looking at the generals taken in these lists and what their win rates were. Lists that took Kroak had a win rate of 62%. So a pretty high win rate there for the Kroak lists. Slann had a 42% win rate if you included Slann instead of Kroak. That's a pretty wide gulf there between the two. Maybe that means that Kroak is winning out this battle here, because that's a pretty big difference. Funnily enough, there were 2 lists that used both Kroak and Slann. Quite a few points tied up there. They went 50% win rate. And then 2 lists that used neither, and they went 30% win rate. So I don't think neither is the best option, but it looks like clearly Kroak is winning this battle of who should be leading your forces. I just threw a couple units in here to see what the win rates were on these. Kroxagor, the normal Kroxagor came out pretty high, 56% win rate. Warspawn, 55%. Raptadon Chargers at 48%, and Aggradon Lancers at 45%. So some of these are included in all the best lists. So don't take this as gospel that Aggradon Lancers just aren't any good. These are spread across quite a few different lists. So just some interesting numbers. Overall, here's our placings for all the Seraphon players. We'll go through those top lists there in the green, the 4-1 lists. But let me know if you see your name on there and how you did at LVO below in the comments. Let us know how everything turned out, what some of the epic moments were for your games. All right, let's take a look at some of these lists. First up, we have Brian's list. He came in 12th place, 4-1. All these lists that we're going to look at are the 4-1 lists. So we're going to look and see what the best players are playing out there. He's got his bringing sexy Kroxagor back, only 1970 points. He is the lone Shadow Strike list in the top 4-1. So interesting. Lore of Celestial Manipulation, we got Morbid Conjuration. Those are pretty standard here. And we got Slann as our general with some Hunters of Huanche with Starstone Bolas, Kroxagor Warspawn, and then in the 2nd Regiment, we have a Skink Starseer with Coastal Familiar, Beastmaster, and 3 units of Raptadon Chargers. So, I think what we have here, we have some very good board control. These Raptadons are going to be extremely fast, okay? So, Shadow Strike gives them a D6 move, okay? In addition to a +2 to their move from the Beastmaster, from the Skink Starseer. If you lean into Asterism at the beginning of the game for another +2 move, a unit of Raptadon Chargers. Oh, let's say we put on Run and Charge from Celestial Manipulation. Now, one of these Raptadon Charger units could easily go, 26 inches in turn 1 and still charge. That makes it for some crazy range if you need it. That really helps balance out the slower speed of the Kroxagor. So, if you needed to, you could charge them in and do a crazy Alpha Strike. But, I mean, movement is always good. But you have good board control here with these Chargers. You have a bigger unit of Chargers. All 3 of those will buff up the War Spawn to give them the extra damage boost. And then you have your, ambushing unit that can still debuff the opponent. And if, one of these Raptadons gets killed early, the Slann has a chance to bring them back. Same for the Kroxagor as they are lost as well. So a good all-around list. It has some heavy hitting stuff, but also some really good speed. Nobody really ever wants to mix it up with Kroxagor. And so once they make it through the Raptadons, you're going to be able to hit them hard with those Kroxagor. So a nice, well-balanced list there, I think, from Brian. Next one is Erik and Lord Kroak, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. 1990 points. This is in Sunclaw, 2 drops, Celestial Manipulation, Morbid Conjuration, and we've got Lord Kroak with a unit of Aggradon Lancers reinforced in his General's Regiment, a Bastildon with Arc of Sotek, Kroxagor, minimum unit of Kroxagor, a minimum unit of Source Guard, filling out the General's Regiment. And then in the 2nd Regiment, we have a Skink Starseer with Kotal Familiar, Beastmaster, Hunters of Huanche, 2 different types, one with Dart Pipes and one with Bolas, probably just for the points, because, we don't have enough points to upgrade the Dart Pipes. And then another unit of Kroxagor. So some of the, a little bit, plays far different than I think than Brian's, because Kroak does want to get up the board so he can get his spell casting off, do some damage that way. Aggradon Lancers in the General's Regiment will be able to take some, the buffs for like special assignment or something if you want to send them off that way. But you're going to see him paired up with the Starseer a lot for that Beastmaster buff, because that's really the only unit in this list that's going to get use of Beastmaster. I guess maybe the Bastildon also. That Bastildon pairs so well with Lord Kroak, though. That Bastildon with Arc of Sotek is going to be able to pump out some mortal wounds with its Rampage at 9 inches. And so as people get close to Lord Kroak, they're going to be taking mortal wounds not just from Lord Kroak, but also from the Bastildon. I really like that power pair together. I don't know if that's how he's running it, but that's how I like to run it. Minimum Kroxagor, these smaller units of Kroxagor, you might think, why doesn't he pair those up for massive damage? But they actually do pretty good on their own, too. They don't need a lot of support. The only buff they really ever need is, all-out attack. And they're able to take on those units that are, like a unit of Liberator standing on an objective. They can take those out. Those smaller screens, they will do wonderfully into those infantry units that are just trying to play the board. So never underestimate just a smaller unit of Krox. And the Hunters of Huanche, of course, will play battle tactics extremely well. Next up, we got James, and he is playing Sunclaw as well. 3 drops, Celestial Manipulation, Primal Energy, so mixing it up a little bit with Manifestation lore. Primal Energy is nice with the Gnashing Jaws. I love the Gnashing Jaws, and the Life Swarm plays real well into stuff that you want to keep alive. We've got Lord Kroak, some Kroxagor War Spawn, a reinforced Source Guard in the General's Regiment. In the 2nd Regiment, Star Priest with Hunters of Huanche, a couple units of Skinks. These are probably just for board play, but also, those Skinks will help buff up the War Spawn. So a good screen for the War Spawn to help give them their buff. A Source Scarvet on Carnosaur, kitted out with Incandescent Retresses and Being of the Stars. This is literally one of my favorite units right here. A Scar Veteran Carnosaur with Incandescent Retroces, which means it heals in both hero phases, mine and yours. And Being of the Stars, which means it's unrendable. It's always going to be on a 4-up save. It tends to be extremely hard to kill. And as long as you're, not letting everything attack it. But it tends to be fairly hard to kill. And it can do some damage. It can play the flanks really well. It can go tie up their big hammer unit for a couple turns. It turns out to be well worth its 230 points. It generally feels like it's worth more than 230 when it's kind of kitted out this way. There'll be some armies that just end up not being able to kill this thing through the course of the game, or by the time they do, they've wasted so much time and so much effort onto it that you've been able to score the rest of the board and win the game. In this regiment, we have a couple of Source Warriors. Those are great to just go stand on circles. So, War Spawn's a big hammer here. They'll be supported by one of those skink units to make sure that they stay buffed up. And then Kroak and his Source Guard will be moving up the board to do some mortal wounds. While your Carnosaur probably takes the flanks or goes like a bullet right into the middle of your army to tie you up. And Warriors grab the objective. I like this list. This one's fun. Next one, we've got Tad with his frogs with freaking laser beams attached to their heads. This is in Sunclaw, Celestial, Morbid, and we've got Kroak with 2 reinforced units of warriors. That's a lot of beef. A Skink Star Priest in that regiment. That's kind of nice, because if you do end up with more drops than the opponent, probably not going to have it too often with only 2 drops, but you could give them that field marshal ability to give those warriors extra movement. We have a Skink Oracle on Troglodon, kitted out with Incandescent Retroces and Being of the Stars. That's kind of that same combo, but this is even better on the Troglodon, because the Troglodon's going to heal in hero phase and at the end of the turn now. Troglodon's extremely hard to kill. If you don't get it all the way down, it will heal all the way back up. It doesn't do near as much damage as the Carnosaur. When it gets stuck in, it can't dig its way out, kind of like a Carnosaur can. A Carnosaur can dig its way out of a combat eventually, but the Troglodon seems to struggle with that. But maybe you don't care. I think what you might be trying to squish this Troglodon in with a unit of warriors or the Kroxagore to kind of help keep them alive longer. Because it does have a great rampage to make the opponent -1 to hit, so makes things a little bit harder to kill. Couple of units of Hunters Fwanche, and then a reinforced unit of Kroxagore. So this list has a lot of wounds here. 2 reinforced unit of Kroxagore, a reinforced unit of 2 reinforced unit of Source Warriors, and a reinforced unit of Kroxagore, along with the unkillable Troglodon and hopefully an unkillable Kroak, depending on how lucky you are. So a tough list to remove off the table. Next up, we've got Sam Osborne's. We won't read all of that. It looks like he got sidetracked and he decided to play Seraphon instead of whatever he was going for. Sunclaw, Celestial, Morbid. We've got Kroak, an Astrolith bearer in that list with a Being of the Stars, so the Astrolith is unrendable. So reinforced Source Guard, reinforced Warriors, 2 units of reinforced Warriors. In Regiment number 2, we've got a Skink Starseer with Kotal Familiar, a Bastildon with Ark of Sotek, and a couple of Hunters of Hwanche. So we've got our ambushing battle tactic units here. We've got our stand on circle units here. We have our move up the board, do some damage with... Whoop. What did we just do? Don't ask that. Move up the board with our Source Guard with Kroak to do some damage there. So another list with a lot of Source Warriors. We're seeing Source Warriors in this LVO here. Source Warriors are doing pretty good in these lists. So an interesting direction that Seraphon seems to be going in. Last of all, we've got Harry. He's got his Aggradon Heavy Renaissance Enforce list. How about Reconnaissance Enforce list? Sunclaw, two drops, Celestial, Morbid. But he's got 18 Aggradons in this list. I like this one. This is kind of what I'm building for. I've got 12 Aggradons. I'm working on the next 3. I'm trying to build up to 18. This is kind of what I'm looking forward to. We've got Slann as our general with Kotal Familiar. Helps you. Kotal Familiar, I can't remember if I've talked about this so far, but it's gives you a extra 1 dice for 1 spellcast. So very good for getting off Purple Sun when you need that, or if you really need run and charge. I ended up using a lot for run and charge. I need to make sure and get my Aggradon somewhere. That's a good one to use it for. Kotal Familiar is great on Slann. Lots of Aggradons, obviously. Some Hunters of Huanche to make sure you can get those battle tactics. A Scar Veteran on Aggradon with Beastmaster, of course, to give the Aggradon Lancers extra movement and give them extra attacks from the Aggradon. And a small unit of Source Guard to help guard the Slann, make sure he doesn't get plinked off. In this list, you really want that Slann to roll those 4-ups to bring back some Aggradon Lancers once they're killed. Because you will be mixing it up pretty heavily with these. You probably need to hit them hard with at least one of these and count on bringing half that unit back with the Slann as soon as possible. So start that resurrection train going. All right, those are the top 4-in-1 lists from LVO. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody there. That went 4-in-1. I think we covered all those lists. Has some fun stuff. They are all quite a bit different. You know, we've got a good mix of units used in our lists, and so that's pretty exciting to see. They're not all cookie cutter, just the same list over and over again, and so it's a fun time to be a Seraphon player. Get out there, make a list your own, and do well. Let me know below in the comments if you went to LVO and how things went, and we'll see you guys next time.